Philosophers talk to our times towards the theory of common notions. There is a tension within Spinoza. Particularly you see it without inadequate ideas. It's where you particularly see it. In relation to the difference between what he would call objective thought, that is, the idea as it exists of something other than myself, as it exists in my mind, and the thing that tumbles from outside. What happens to me is that I'm caught up in a nexus of causes. I'm made to grow, I'm made to lessen. And yet my mind doesn't see that. It doesn't feel the change, it doesn't see the change. All it grasps in a single objective idea. Objective, Spinoza is using in the classical sense, which is roughly subjective in the modern sense. A perceptional idea, a percept if you like, is an image of that which is somehow responsible for that change. An image that imperfectly expresses what that change is. That catches it only as I feel it in my mind, as I have been caught up within it. And between the two, between the joy and the love, and the pain and the hate, there is a chasm. That chasm is the chasm between formal and objective ideas. Between ideas as they exist, directly, actively in God, always in the middle, always in the change. And ideas as they exist, so that's the thing as it exists in God, and the idea as it exists in me, where it falls upon me as the perception of it as it is in the act of changing me, making me other than I was. And the difference between the two is as different. This chasm in postmodern thinking is as deep, although slightly differently arranged. Postmodern thinking of early modern thinking. This chasm in early modern thinking, it's still early in the morning and it's cloudy for once, and I'm totally deaf because it's been hot, and that's made my ears go deaf, but never mind. This chasm in early modern thinking is in many ways as deep as it would later be in postmodern thinking. For Spinoza, there is a bigger gap between the object and the thing, as there is for Foucault. So with Foucault, in his masterwork, This Is Not a Pipe, he goes through in a wonderful, playful way the sense in which a drawing of a pipe is not a pipe, but the word "this is not a pipe" is not a pipe. But then what is a pipe? Is it the three-dimensional object? Or is it the concept that somehow creates an invisible bond? I think Deleuze calls it in What is Philosophy, a moment of infinite speed that takes you through a lexicon of words, an image, a 3D shape, and a lifetimes of experience. So that we all look at it and go, oh yes, that's a pipe. That one over there, that picture, and that thing over there, that's a pipe. And yet they are not even remotely the same. That idea in early modern thought is the difference between formal and objective thinking. Formal thinking reaches out. It is the world in the act of changing. It is the mode itself. Objective is simply how we understand that in our minds, how we nail it down. And yet the two are radically different. And they're very radically different for Spinoza. I am changed. Some affection changes my soul, but I do not see the affection. I merely see the object that I love and the object that I hate, and I feel the feeling. And yet, because I create within me a union of the feeling, but also the perception, that becomes its own mode, but somewhere else within my mind, as I unify the two, and I express that feeling temporally. I catch it in a web of hope, of fear, of plans, of anxieties, of loves to come. I take then a feeling that originated beyond me, a change that came from beyond me, and the way I have grasped that, the way those causes has fell upon me, so I've had a single idea of that change, which are distinct things, and turn it into something in myself that is also distinct, hope or fear, into an affect then, that defines how I then act, how I then desire, how I then seek to change my world. Each affect, each way you are changed then, falls upon the mind first as an objective idea, but that idea can never be does not comprehend the change, but rather creates, as it were, a new unit between my perception of the change and the change itself, that then creates new things within my mind. And they all exist in different temporalities. So hope or fear is that loved object seen in terms of the past, while in terms of the future. Well, fear is it personified in terms of the past. I take then the change that was originated within me when I first saw the object, the idea it created within me, and I turn them into temporalities through which I live. It's a very complicated sequence of exchanges, but the fundamental rule is that in order that the mind looks upon the world, and the world shifts it, it changes it, but the mind comprehends it not, understands it only in terms of fixed presence, that are different, that are that thing as it has changed my mind, as I give that change an objective idea, as I wrap it up in a here and a now, a particular perception. But the combination of particular perception, the here and the now, and the change then becomes something else within my mind. And so it goes on. There is always a chasm between then the perception of the thing and the thing itself for an inadequate idea. You never grasp it. You can never even understand it fully in your soul, because the minute you try to understand it, it shifts and becomes something else. Because your nature is trying to expand something that is different from it in order to comprehend where the objective idea, which was of it, came from. It's a complicated sequence of moves, but renders all thought necessarily objective. Perhaps I ought to remind you, it's bugging me, so I'm going to. The point is that this is how he doesn't have the heresy of parallelism that Leibniz and also his commentators habitually levelled at Spinoza doesn't for him really exist. It doesn't exist because the perception of the thing, as it lies within me, within objective ideas, it absolutely lies within the chain of causes that the thing causes. So what I conceive within me is a change that it has wrought in my soul, which I wrap up as an objective idea. So the point is that the parallelism, which then has its separate set of causes within my mind and causes further things later down for me. And so the parallelism of causes, the parallelism of modes, which is the one that really matters, is sacrosanct. The fact that perception exists on the wrong side of the mode, it looks to that which was caused and forgets that it itself is a cause, is neither here nor there. It doesn't break the fundamental chain, and the fundamental chain is the chain of causes. That's the attributial chain, the chain that is created by the infinite mediate mode, which is the same, come what may, as it relates to substance. So, common notions is Spinoza's answer to this problem. It's how you start to breed an idea that can contain its own difference, the difference between formal and objective thought within it, as part of the idea. Here, it is reflecting, refracting, expressing the same problem that actual existence solves for individual modes. My idea of myself actually existing is actually is expressed directly within the perception of myself actually existing. So the perception and the idea become the same, as it is expressed within the attribute, as it looks towards substance and contains it within a single whole. The common notions is a third deduction. I could be all grand and give them terms. I could terribly Kantian. It's the word deduction. It's temporarily made me all feel transcendental. This is the third imminent deduction of Spinoza. There you go. Where he wants to understand how the unity of a common notion, which unifies the objective idea, but also the way it is formally in the middle of itself, operates. Now, in ethics, he kind of does it. It's there in the habitual. It's there in the man of reason. It's there in the one I haven't done yet, the surprise. It's there. He's clearly alluding to it. But I actually think that the formal elaboration of the theory, which is defeated him because the science doesn't exist. So he gets it confused with the science of his day. He gets it confused, as I was talking about yesterday. He gets it confused with Descartes' revolution. And Descartes' revolution to talk about relations of motion and rest, and not just formal essence and all the rest and all the Aristotelian stuff, feels like to Spinoza it is the answer. And so he misses that it wasn't nearly enough, that you needed Newton to really be able to overthrow Aristotle. So he doesn't have enough examples to be able to think it through in his own head. Pete doesn't have enough science, let's be honest with you. Spinoza is a great lens grider, absolutely wonderful. But you can see it in his letters on Nietzsche. He is not at the cutting edge of chemistry. I think I would say that. I think that's probably fair. He admired the cutting edge of it. He wanted to understand it. He wanted to engage with it. But it wasn't the way his mind was working. In the same way that almost every philosopher that I know has some sort of love affair with quantum mechanics. And I sit there and I always wonder, well, but do we understand it? Well, does anyone understand it? But you know what I mean. Do you understand the maths? Because if you don't actually understand the maths, do you know what you're talking about? You can see I've been a secondary maths teacher for far too long, can't you? Anyway, that's all beside the point. So how does it work for common notions? The point about a common notion is that the perception you have of the thing, the perception of the force, is as a result of an experiment that you have set up. And once you're setting up experiments, then the perception leads to the next idea. So that you make an experiment, you have a result. That result immediately opens on to a whole set of more implications that could follow. That objective looking at the world becomes part of a formal exchange of the world where you now do this, and then the idea again changes. And then you do that, and the idea and then again changes. Now, throughout all of these, in the concept of an idea like energy or force, in a sense, it exists through 1,000 as being a single word that articulates myriad changes, myriad evolutions and shifts. So a force is sometimes felt as you feel the force, the centrifugal force, as you spin around on a roundabout. It's sometimes measured. It's sometimes not felt at all as you stand upon a bridge and have the force of gravity able to pull you down if only you jumped. But of course you don't do it. Or as the world spins and you are held on by gravity and do not feel it at all. It's only then felt at certain times, at certain occasions. But what it exists then is as an entire mathematical language for understanding how different things relate one to the other. A set of formulas. A whole evolving middle. A whole evolving corpus of knowledge where one conception, one perception leads to a theory. And that theory will then open up to different perceptions. The whole given together. But at no one point of it summarizes the whole. There is no moment where you suddenly go, oh, I understand all of Newton. I taught him for donkey's years. I know that doesn't work like that. You always have to find the right bit of the theory. You always have to locate yourself in the middle of the bit of the argument that you're in and find it. There's no one thing that it is. It's a set of tools, an axis, a way to move. And for me, that's probably what makes common notions. Common notions then don't have a unity like the attribute has a unity. They don't have a unity like actual existence has a unity of the soul. The unity is given in a word, in a theorem, in an idea or force that opens out onto perceptions, perceptions that lead to further experiments, experiments that lead to further perceptions, until all of it becomes like a corpus of knowledge, a whole set of very interlinked elements where one immediately pulls into another. That's why maths A-level mechanics can exist as it does. You start off with one set of theories, and then gradually from those set of theories you apply them across different contexts. You say, well, it works here, but what about there? That perception doesn't quite work. What will that do? You gradually integrate it, each one leading to the next, and to an exchange with the world where the world is shifting and changing as you change it, as you modify it, as you be able to relate to it differently, as you also invent concepts that map it out properly, as you stop using the notion of speed but talk only of velocity, as you make vectors enter in that allow you to map out the universe differently, to fix the way the commonalities work differently, to map out how forces are acting, not just as a single blob, but as a direction. And then the Newton law of different forces at right angles don't interact can kick in, and you can understand the path of a cannonball fired or a spaceship shot into the sky. It's a complicated sequence of moves, but the point about a common notion is that each move has to be held within the overall corpus. It has to be interpretable by other bits of the theory. Each perception that you have must relate to and be related to other bits of the theory. That is why you can mark it. I mean, it always struck me as very interesting when we're doing mechanics, that you have one bit of theory and then suddenly you open out to a whole set of other theories, and that somebody else can follow your argument. They can look down straight away and know whether you are right or whether you are wrong, what you are thinking of and how. And when you go wrong, you can see where they go wrong, which bit of the theory they've missed, where they've let blind panic take the place of inadequate ideas, or gone too quickly, or not got quite the right commonality in their desperation to finish this dreadful question and be done. Well, I've done it myself. I loathe mechanics. Doesn't stop me admiring it as a common notion, though, as somehow open. So they are complicated ideas, common notions, ideas that contain, but do they actually exist? What, of course, they do is they create a nexus that allows you to predict the future, certainly. But you certainly rig the inputs. You say what you are going to be talking about. And that is not straightforward existence. So the move, for instance, to velocity is a very weird one if you think about it. As humans, we perceive speed. We're not forever dividing it up into x and y, into an axis of Cartesian coordinates to analyze each force separately and then reintegrate them at the end. We don't do it. The very act then of working Newtonianly takes you beyond your immediate perceptual world. That's why the idiocy of flat earthism exists. I mean, let's be honest about it. The flat earth is merely an attempt to generalize something that cannot be generalized. So it takes what they perceive to be immediate experience and turns it into the only plausible reality. But the point about every common notion, the point about reason itself, that's why flat earthism is one of the gateway drugs into absolute lunacy. Because the very point about a common notion is that it allows you to step beyond any one perceivable world and work out the world that doesn't actually exist, but that underpins all of actual existence. Which is, of course, the huge gift, the common notion and of human science. Common notions, then, are a way to bridge an otherwise impossible divide within reason between things and between objects in themselves and words, between the effect that something has upon you and your mind as you understand that effect. In the common notion, it creates a dialogue. It doesn't reconcile. That's why they don't actually exist. Let's say it very clearly. It doesn't reconcile, but it articulates. It articulates that difference to make each point a next movement, a formula that can be applied, another movement, so that each change gets twisted back into the overall theory, or you've just gone wrong. They're powerful because of that, because not they answer the difference, but they rather articulate it and turn it into a theory, into something in itself, a powerful idea to understand the world. And that is, of course, why they matter so very much.